You've done everything right according to Amazon terms of service, then you wake up to see that your sales are down, your listings are deactivated, or even worse, your account has been suspended and you have no idea what happened. In the Day 2 podcast, we've talked a lot about what Amazon can do to you. And let's be honest, there's a lot of ways that Amazon can F your business. But today, we're joined by my good friend, Chris McCabe. Chris is a former performance and compliance team member, founder of e-commerce Chris, founder of the Seller Velocity Conference, and a great friend and defender of Amazon sellers. He joins us today to talk about what happens when sellers attack. I'm Jason Boyce, founder and CEO of Avenue 7 Media, co-author of The Amazon Jungle, now available in audiobook format and Audible, by the way, and the host of the Day 2 podcast. Chris McCabe, thanks for being here. How you doing and what's cooking?
I'm really looking forward to this. Honor and a privilege to be here. Thanks for having me.
The privilege is all mine, my friend. Chris, I want to start by asking you a little bit about your background. I know your background, little Hollywood sprinkled in there, but tell our listeners and our viewers a little bit about how you got mixed up in this Amazon game.
Yeah, well, you're sitting in LA right now, I think. 2 decades ago.
That was 92 degrees today. Yeah.
I was a little closer to the beach, so I had a bit more of a breeze than where you are, I think.
Yeah.
But I was in LA. I was between entertainment industry jobs looking for some freelance work. That's how I got into fraud prevention gigs. E-commerce was still in its infancy, I would say, as was the Amazon marketplace that we now know, the third-party marketplace, was just a glimmer in Jeff Bezos's eye at that point. But it was probably already, in the works somewhere in the back of his brain, or his S-team executives, were already kind of getting together to decide what was going to happen. I wasn't in Seattle until a few years later when I decided that the weather in Los Angeles was just too good for me, too sunny. I wanted some gray clouds. I wanted, cue ominous music. I wanted some rainy days and, the old
some
vitamin E.
Right, rain.
So I moved to Seattle. Yeah, I was in Seattle for 10 years. Most of those years I was working at Amazon on the teams you just mentioned, commonly known as seller performance. So looking at third-party accounts pretty much every minute of every hour for the many years I worked at Amazon.
That's awesome. And you're a hiker. So in 10 years in Seattle, you must have seen every hiking trail.
So this is the caveat about Seattle and working at Amazon. I worked a lot of hours. Not always.
No time for hiking. Ain't got time for that.
I did
to respond to.
I did some camping at Rainier. I mean, I've done more since moving back to the East Coast than I think I did during my years at Amazon. I think I've been to Mount Baker more. I've done a lot more hiking in areas that, like the Cascades, of course, are beautiful. It's a perfect place to hike.
Yeah.
There were some long hikes that I would say, oh, well, that's an overnight, and I've already committed to doing overtime in the email queues for this week or for next week or whatever. And of course, with each passing year, there was more overtime on that job because the marketplace was expanding, more sellers, every day. When you started, there were only a handful of sellers and it just started multiplying astronomically. So toward the latter stages of my tenure at Amazon, it was really a 6 days a week job. And there were some people during peak periods, I would do 7 days and there wouldn't be any hiking and I'd probably miss some good weekends. So trying to make up for it now on the Seattle trips.
Yeah. I mean, I hear that a lot and I know this firsthand. Mm-hmm. Hard to have a life when you're working at Amazon, especially when you were in that accelerated growth phase with them back in the day. Chris, the title of the episode is When Sellers Attack. First of all, I just want to say, what kind of asshole goes out there and attacks fellow sellers? I mean, seriously, what kind of cockknocker goes out there and wrecks fellow sellers, Amazon sellers, who made Amazon what it is today? I know that you run across a lot of these kinds of characters. Have you done any sort of personality analysis? Or are we just talking about sociopaths? Or what? Is there any themes in terms of what kind of jerk goes out there and attacks well-meaning small businesses who are doing the right thing on Amazon?
I haven't done any character studies. I think I've been listening to a lot of true crime podcasts lately that are helping me understand this mentality. But I understood it from an early stage because before the dot-com bubble burst, I was working at companies that probably folded after a couple of years, but I was learning early fraud investigation basics and understanding the fraudster mentality. And I'm sure my first 2 months on the job, I was like, do you mean there's a guy out there just ripping off credit cards and using those skimmer machines and stealing all day and gathering up as much product as he could find so he could sell it someplace else, or so that he could sell it, on the back of a truck? And of course, the answer was yes. That's exactly what those people are. Those are fraudsters, commonly known as fraudsters. In the Amazon community, the Amazon marketplace space, we often talk about black hat services, black hat sellers. Services started understanding that they could meet the needs of the greedy seller. So there are sellers that are using fraudster type tactics, but they're not professional thieves, professional, fraudsters, right? They might work with professional fraudsters. They might hire them. I mean, essentially, when they hire a black hat service, that's what they're doing. Whether it's overseas or a company based in the United States, they're hiring somebody who's going to be their hit squad, who's going to go after their competition. The problem in this equation is that Amazon, despite the fact that it's created teams, I mean, very belatedly, finally created some abuse prevention teams, they are so behind the fraudster curve. That's the issue here. Amazon's not catching up to that fastball anytime soon. You're always hearing about those pitchers. The radar gun hit 104 last night or 106. They are like getting flamethrowers to strike out all these abuse prevention teams in Amazon because they're late to the party. They're understaffed, probably under-resourced. And then beyond that, you have to pivot constantly. The techniques are, the permutations of fraud behavior, fraudulent tactics are changing. Anytime they're blocked in one path, they just find another way, right? That's been going on for decades online, but Amazon, for whatever reason, doesn't understand the magnitude of the problem and how many brands are damaged when they can't hold up their side of things.
There's a couple of key points there that I want to emphasize. Number one is, has there ever been a company as large as Amazon as understaffed as Amazon? I mean, you're the second largest employer in the United States, and you don't have nearly enough resources to do the work that's required to protect sellers. Ever seen anything like this, Chris?
Well, and then the other large employer out there is Walmart. I don't know as much about their marketplace. I know you know quite a bit about Walmart and more than I do. I'm an Amazon guy, so I focus there, but I assume there's all the same fraud tactics at Walmart. When I worked at Amazon, I expected Walmart, since at that point they had many, many more billions in valuation than Amazon did in those years. I assumed they would start trying to poach us. Hey, we've got to grow our marketplace. We have to protect it. We need to find experts. Well, let's just go to our main, what ostensibly is their main retail competitor in one place, Amazon. As far as I know, nobody on my team ever heard from Walmart. This is why sometimes I don't take Walmart, at least their e-commerce business, as seriously, because I know they could have been doing this in 2011, 2012, 10 years ago. And they didn't. So I guess between Walmart and Amazon, you'd have most of the e-commerce related crimes. And we're mostly talking about brand abuses. Most of our clients are private label brands, right? So.
Yeah. And then back to what kind of special a-hole is the one that attacks these good, well-meaning sellers.
Greed.
So what I'm hearing is you got greedy sellers who want to destroy their competition at all costs, which is ridiculous. There's 70 placements on the first page of search results. Granted, I know most of the business goes to those top 5, top 10, but there's plenty of room for other good, well-meaning sellers who are doing right by the Amazon consumer. But you're saying greedy sellers who get a little bit, who themselves are either sociopaths or they go and hire legit criminals and fraudsters to go and attack their competitors or do these bad things. So that's sort of the two buckets then that you see, huh, Chris?
And Amazon sometimes, in their defense, sometimes Amazon is suing these companies when they identify them. And that's why companies that you hear about a lot for months, suddenly their URL takes you to a dog page. So Amazon is, again, eventually, very slowly, when pushed, when pressured, reacting, not proacting, taking out some of these companies. But for example, there are still companies out there faking supplier documentation and brand approval documentation, and those sites are still up. Yeah. And I know those sites have been reported to Amazon, and Amazon hasn't taken action on those yet. So the question becomes, if they do take action eventually, 2023, 2024, do they ever explain why they didn't do it 2021, 2022?
Yeah, the answer is
Generally, they
no.
get a pass in my experience. Yeah.
Right. And before the call, you'd mentioned a very interesting one.
Mm-hmm.
A well-known black hat seller that you knew about. So does that happen a lot where people come to you and say, "Hey, I need help, Chris,
Yeah.
or Leia, or Mike. I need help," and you're like, "Oh, I know this person."
We do a lot of reporting of abuse for brands that are legit brands. We vet them. We talk to them. Hey, have you ever attacked this guy? Is that why he's attacking you now, or woman? Why is this, happening? Are they just trying to win some sales from you? Of course, like you said, if you're really greedy, instead of finding another product, another SKU, and trying to outcompete your adversary that way, they're trying to cheat, right? Essentially, what we're talking about is cheating and theft. So how are they cheating? Well, they're reporting a lot of our clients for faking their product reviews. Well, we'll stay with reviews, and a little bit later I'll get into the intellectual property bogus complaints. But
sure.
What a lot of black hat sellers are realizing is that they can now, because Amazon's having such difficulty deciphering who is faking their reviews and who isn't, or who is being set up by a competitor to make it look like that party's faking reviews. And what I mean by that is some people are creating Facebook groups or an entirely different web page that it looks like it's your brand and it looks like you're bribing people to give you 5-star reviews. They might copy your images and put them there. They might copy some language off of your actual website and put it there. But they're sending Amazon those links and they're gaming and tricking abuse prevention teams and saying, look at this guy. He's faking reviews. They created it. It's their black hat competitor that created the illusion. But because Amazon teams are so strained, the resources aren't there because they're only spending a couple minutes looking at this stuff, they're gullible and they're easy to fool. I almost don't want to say this too much because I don't want people out there with nefarious intentions to be like, great, I can mess with these guys all day. They won't know the difference. They'll be spinning in so many circles. But that is what's happening. And it's important for people to know that black hats are sometimes guilty of faking reviews themselves. But instead of stopping that practice and going legit, now that there's more scrutiny by Amazon, by the FTC, by perhaps even the Antitrust House Subcommittee, instead of doing that, they're saying, hey, I'm a victim. Amazon, you suspended me for faking reviews. I'm being attacked by this guy. And that's what happened in this recent tip that I got. I do hear a lot of these things. People send me screenshots. They call me, sometimes they just explain the story. They don't always hire us to work on it, but I hear the stories constantly. And this was an occasion where somebody was using Amazon's social media teams. Sorry. The W comes from Twitter. They're using Twitter a lot. And they're saying, I've been attacked. I've been suspended. I'm legit. They're not. They're well known to be attacking other brands throughout their category. They have finally been suspended. But the way they get out of Amazon jail is to be very vocal, very public about, I'm getting attacked repeatedly. You, Amazon, knows this is happening, which Amazon does know it's happening, right? That's why they created these teams. So they're tricking Amazon into believing that they're a victim and reinstating their account. What made it an eye-opener with the black hat seller that was reported to us, not just the size of the seller, because they're selling millions every month. So, they're selling tons of product based on all those fake 5 stars. No, it's not just that. When they reinstated the seller, they gave him all his reviews back. All the fake reviews were reinstated along with the account. Normally, when there's the mea culpa and you appeal and you say, I'm sorry, you go through the proper appeals channels with seller performance. Normally, if you get a second chance, you get your account reinstated. But you don't get all those black hat reviews back. So obviously, he's still ranking high and he's still at the top of his category.
So Chris, there's a lot to unpack there. I want to come back to something you said because this makes my freaking blood boil. There's a seller out there that you know of who's creating a brand page or a Facebook page that looks like his competitor. And he makes that web page look like he's paying for reviews, which is not only against Amazon terms of service,
right,
but is also illegal. as part of the false advertising claim. I think it's the FTC that manages that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and it is the
A
FTC.
lot of
Okay.
a lot of
And
sellers just go right to the FTC and report this stuff themselves. They've told me. So
so sellers will go right to the FTC and report false advertising, buying of fake reviews.
they
Got it.
they will they will now versus last year, the year before when it was a lesser known. But the FTC's been in the news a ton in the last 18 months, and I think they figured out if there's fraud online, you can report it.
Well, yeah, I mean, we'll talk later about the Impow and the Aki takedown. That was
Mhm.
definitely driven by the FTC. Fascinating. So
Yeah.
so these jerks are pretending to be their competitor,
Hmm.
making it look as if their competitor is buying fake reviews when they're doing everything right and within terms of service. And then they're complaining. These fraudsters are complaining to
That's
Amazon
how it
saying, "Hey, my
works.
competitor is buying reviews," and they get taken down.
That's how it works. And
Ah,
to give you a quick parallel, it's not just reviews. They do this with intellectual property, fake copyright complaints too, which I know we're going to talk about a little bit later, but just a quick slice of
yeah,
that for now. It's the same concept. They take
right.
your images, which you probably shot in your own studio or you hired a service to do it, a photographer.
Yeah,
They take your images, your text, sometimes just images from Amazon, not even from your own website. They take it from Amazon storefronts.
yeah. They're probably just using Photoshop.
And then they put it on a page. They create a new website, slight permutation of your brand name. They might make a Facebook group, just to sell it a little bit, maybe an Instagram account, something like that. And then they accuse you of a copyright violation, of violating their rights ownership. Because in the old days, all you had to do was make the allegation. You're violating my copyright. Amazon would take that page down, send you a warning. You didn't even need proof, just the allegation. But Amazon eventually realized fake copyright complaints were everywhere, so it got a little harder. So now they show copies of the images and links to the website that they made, which was long after you took those photos, long after you posted them on your storefront. You have to appeal that, showing the dates, you created the pages. For the love of God, copyright your content, your images. Do that today, whenever you hear me say this, because brands are wasting tons and tons of time trying to appeal this, getting rejected by Amazon numerous times because Amazon doesn't believe it. I
Yeah.
think if you've got your copyrights set and that IP is structured accordingly before you even list and sell that product, which doesn't take a long time to do, it's not that big of a problem.
And copywriting is a relatively easy thing
Yeah.
to do, right? You capture your images, you
Right.
copy everything, and you
Right.
submit it up. Do you know how that process works, Chris? Can you share that with our viewers and
I mean,
listeners?
it's not, yeah. And I just want to distinguish between, like, trademarks take months, right? I
Sure.
mean, we can do a whole other episode just about trademark abuse. And I'm not even going to, it is a fairly simple process. I usually recommend, even though it's something we can talk about, I recommend that people hire an IP attorney to make sure they do it correctly without making mistakes.
Got it.
Because I could give you a quick, like, thumbnail sketch, but anything legal, you want to make sure you've got a bulleted list and you check them off as you go down the list. And, obviously I'm not an attorney, but I just want to make sure that brands aren't skipping that step, just the way it's bad to skip the trademarking your product step, your brand.
So that is a great tip, Chris, in order for sellers to defend themselves and prevent or at least have a leg to stand
Yeah.
on when a-hole sellers attack,
Yeah.
right? Get your content, get your imagery, your visuals, your brand messaging, all that stuff copyrighted. Work with your IP attorney.
Mm-hmm.
It's a relatively inexpensive process
Oh, yeah.
compared to getting a trademark, and like you said, it takes a lot less time. So then let's say that I'm a seller. I copyright all of my content on my own direct to consumer website, on Amazon and on my Walmart store, whatever. Once I have that, how does that help me when this black hat seller that who's such a jerk goes out and copies all my stuff and pretends and makes it look like I'm doing bad things when I'm actually not?
Yeah. And you give the timeline. First of all, a lot of the people we work with have been attacked between 5 and 10 times already. So you can refer to the past timeline and the past history of, remember those 7 other times some random person accused me of stealing their copyrights? Remember those
5 to 10 times, Chris?
The most I've done is 1 to 2 dozen times we've had to redo it. So there's no institutional memory. Amazon loves to forget as soon as you walk out of the room. We had one this week. We're recording this on a Friday, Monday or Tuesday. This happened. We got them reinstated by Wednesday, and I think it's back down because they resubmitted another fake IP complaint. And because Amazon is so in love with rubber stamping these blindly without even really reading them or looking at them. And the messaging shows it too. I mean, a lot of the message has like empty brackets or like right click errors, copy and paste that doesn't even make sense. Sometimes it's written.
Yeah.
It's like dear blank and it's not even you. It's another seller.
So really, really good stuff here. Not only copyright your content, capture and record all of these instances with all the case ID numbers. And you as the seller, what I'm hearing you say, Chris, you need to keep a chronological history of this information because Amazon has the memory of a gnat and they're forgetting this once they fix it. So this way you can present when you'll have all your ducks in a row and you can present this information chronologically to Amazon saying, look, I'm repeatedly being attacked. Look at this history. And that's what you find can really help these sellers.
And there's another reason, just one final point on the attack strategy, the DMCA counter notice. It's very important to understand this dynamic.
Whoa, the what? Can you?
DMCA counter notice. 10 days have to elapse. You can submit a DMCA counter notice to Amazon. They have 10 days to contact that other party, even if that other party is a ghost who is not legitimate and has no intention, of course, they have no intention of responding at all to justify their copyrights. They are just trying to get the 10 days off of you of sales. That's the intention.
So you report abuse within Amazon. You have to wait. So that's what that DMCA
Digital Media
is.
Digital Media Copyright Act.
Got it. Yeah. So it's a notice. It's using the U.S. laws to say, hey, Amazon, I've been attacked under the DMCA Act. I'm giving you notice. And then you have to wait 10 days for Amazon to
it sounds like this hasn't happened to any of your brands yet. So that's fantastic. I'm glad to hear that because we're hearing.
Well, you know who I call if they do. I'm calling you, Chris.
That's right.
But so you wait 10 days, and then after 10 days, what happens? What happens after?
Well, that's
10
why
days?
This is better in some ways than just accusing you of counterfeit. A lot of brands are accused of counterfeiting their own brands. Their competitor buys from them and just puts fake on the report, or they complain, this is fake, this is counterfeit, this isn't the same as it was last time, this isn't authentic. They're just trying to pummel Amazon with keywords, and of course, Amazon scripts are just grabbing these words and putting you in the penalty box and suspending your listing, even if you're a private label brand. So as we speak and record this, there's thousands of brands out there appealing, saying, I'm not counterfeiting my own product. Or Amazon demands, we need to know your supplier. We want to look at their website. Where's your factory? What's their email address of your contact? What's the phone number for the VP of sales? Whatever it is. And then you send in an invoice, and then they have a very knee-jerk, again, a kind of blind process where they just reject the invoice and don't say why. I'm sure, there's a lot of listeners of yours that are hearing me say this that are kind of smacking their forehead right now because they've wasted a lot of time on this. Amazon is still kind of unsure what kind of seller you are, even when they can see that you're a brand. So they're treating some brands like they're reselling another branded product, which is kind of bizarre. Yeah. But they're asking you for all these invoices. But in theory, you can prove within 24 hours that you're not faking your own stuff, or within 48 hours. Copyright, they might have a 10-day runway of, well, the DMCA notice hasn't been processed yet, counter notice, I should say. So this is in effect, and your listing will stay down for those 10 days while we contact the complainant. But we found out, especially during peak periods like Prime Day and Q4, we found out that Amazon wasn't contacting the complainant the same day you sent the DMCA counter notice. So there could be 10, 12, 14 days that go by before they contacted them. So it wouldn't just be 10 days that those listings were down, it would be 24. And the Black Hats know this, of course.
4 days.
They know that these teams are stretched to the limit. They're way behind. They know that lots of mistakes are made inside Amazon teams. So they knew like copyright was the best way to go. And they don't have to respond anytime in that window. Yeah. They can just sit at home and be quiet.
You know, Chris, this is all such great information. When I was in the Marines, I was a security officer. So I worked on things like physical security and troop force security and and also in some intel stuff through my military police background. Right. And we always used to say in the Marines, we have to make a hard target, right? make yourself a hard target so that the bad guys will go and look for an easier target to attack, because fraudsters are lazy.
Yeah.
So what you're laying out are great steps and ways to make yourself as a seller a hard target for these criminals that are on the platform, number one.
Yes.
And number two, you've laid out some great things that you can do if you are attacked. And you must not rely on Amazon to keep this information. You have to defend yourself and assume that Amazon will do nothing.
Yes.
And then you have to follow through repeatedly, record, rinse, repeat, record, rinse, repeat. I have this right?
Yep. And I've heard you saying similar words on prior Day 2 podcasts like that. Like, don't just show stuff to Amazon and say, you guys run with it from here. It's on your shoulders. It's on you. Brand protection, brand defense. And I know we've kind of talked a lot of doom and gloom so far, and there's like, Cape Fear music in the background for somebody. But
I can always count on you for the dark side.
The movie references. The silver lining here is that this is fixable. You can, if you are a harder target, you can get that fraudster to get bored with you because you keep getting it reinstated, you keep getting it fixed, and they'll move on to someone else. It's not so great for the someone else they move on to. But because Amazon refuses to maintain any sort of institutional memory on these cases, you'll get attacked and attacked and attacked before you get to that point. You can't make yourself bulletproof. We've heard of these concepts like brand exclusivity. There are all these sort of amorphous, Amazon jargon terms thrown around of how you can lock down your listings so people can't hijack them or change them. Right now, brands don't have those options, right? Even gating disappeared over the years. So brands kind of lost every means to protect themselves except to make sure that they're surfacing among management teams at Amazon or higher the fact that you're being attacked repeatedly. You can put in an appeal, how much it's cost you, how long it's gone on, so that they're clearly not willing to take the time to look through the account history, right?
Right.
They're not going to spend half an hour looking at how much it's cost you.
No.
You have to say
it's been 17 days. 1,500 other responses to get to in the next 2 hours. Right?
You would hope in the ideal world, you would think somebody would look at it. They would say this has happened 5 times in 17 days and they've lost 3 million in sales because of it over the last 17 days. Of course they don't do that. If they deep dive it, then yes. If you escalate it where you've got a VP or a senior VP, we can maybe pick on Dave Clark since he left the company recently. If you were emailing it straight to him, he might have delegated it to one of his direct reports, and somebody working for that person or that person themselves would actually take the time to do it. But no one who doesn't, get it in front of that person gets the same quality review and the same seller experience.
And what they look in their dashboard doesn't connect them to the previous cases. Seems like a miss.
No. You
Amazon.
Need to say 17 days, 3 million. We've been attacked 5 times. You need to put that in a very clear, and don't even put this in paragraph form. I mean, I really mean bulleted lists.
Bold.
Yes. Bulleted lists. Yeah.
So explain the amount of money that you've lost as a result of a criminal action against your account.
In each attack, if you think you can quantify it. If you're having trouble quantifying it, pick a similar period last year. You were attacked from November 1st to November 17th. Okay, well, last year, how much did you make on that ASIN during that time? Right?
God willing, if you're a seller and you're listening to this, you don't have to employ these tactics, but it's tactics. But it's great to have these in your back pocket, and it's great to make yourself a hard target. Just a point of emphasis here, Chris. You said anyone can be attacked. Mm-hmm. If you think you can't be attacked, you're wrong.
Right.
But by making yourself a harder target, by doing some of these great steps and taking some of these great measures to protect yourself, you're ahead of the curve. And these jerks will go and attack somebody else who hasn't taken care of themselves.
Right.
So,
fraudsters are looking for signs of weakness. If you look weak, then they start pressing on you. If you look
in my experience, in my opinion, fraudsters are coward. They're looking for the weakest of the bunch to go after. So don't make yourself appeal like a hardened.
Bullying is the best example in society that you can think of. Right. What do bullies look for? Do they look for somebody who's as big as they are that they can challenge and get a good fight? Of course not. And fraudsters are all about the cash. So
Yeah.
If you're making it harder
Yeah.
for them to steal from you, they'll move on to somebody else.
Yeah, if you're listening and you're a black hat seller that's attacked other sellers, screw you. Stop it. Stop it immediately.
Yeah.
I want to. It's interesting, Chris, because there's a theme in here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Amazon. We talked about it. Amazon is severely understaffed for a company their size. They've never really fully put the amount of resources, in spite of their protestations about how much money they spend in the press.
Right.
They never talk about it as a ratio of their revenue. They only
No.
talk about these big numbers, which are really a drop in the ocean
Mm-hmm.
compared to what they should and could be doing
Oh, yeah.
to protect sellers. And then additionally, they create these self-service tools
Mm-hmm.
so that sellers can self-report on each other with probably the best of intentions in mind when they created it. However, what happens is these bad actors are using these tools against good acting, well-meaning sellers who are following all the rules. Damn it.
Right. But Amazon should anticipate that, right?
That's right.
They should be thinking.
Tell me more.
They should be thinking in advance of a certain type of attack. Fraudsters have to change their tactics all the time. So if they launch a new program, a new tool, a new service, whatever, something new with ads, let's say, they should sit down in a room at a high level and figure out, how can this be gamed? How can we be tricked? How can people deceive us? What's the social engineering? Because well-trained fraudsters are, they might know your company just as well as you do as an executive.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of think like the fraudster, and you have to anticipate that if you let your shield or your guard down, they're going to come for you. And if you leave your flank exposed, isn't this the type of stuff Napoleon used to think about when he was planning a battle? Well,
absolutely.
That guy left his flank exposed. So my judgment indicates we need to take them on there first, and then they'll marshal their resources off to the side of the field over here, and then we'll attack them from the other side. And that's the way these guys think. Yeah.
You mentioned briefly in our pre-call, like a food safety example.
Yes.
Talk about someone who's a real scumbag here. Tell me more about this example, because I was just, again, my blood starts to boil every time you share these stories with me, and I get all fired up. Share this with our viewers, would you, and our listeners?
This is
this particular use case.
The darker of the dark side of Amazon is the cases we find where, and some of the brands, by the way, coming to us are pretty put together. They've got data when it comes to consumables. And we do, a lot of our private label brand clients sell in consumables categories. I can't specify the product or the category, of course. I can say that there was a state in our 50 states where the Attorney General got involved and on their behalf contacted Amazon directly, because these were consumables where the products that their competitors were selling didn't have the ingredients as listed on the label. And in fact, they bought the products, they had them tested independently in labs, and found that there were banned substances, at least banned in the United States substances, in those products, and there were known carcinogens in those products. So a public safety issue, right? Without even scratching the surface, right out of the gate. I ended up looking at the letter that the Attorney General's office sent to Amazon about these products.
So Chris, I just want to clarify one thing. So this is an example of where a seller who was doing everything the right way, producing safe products and selling them on the Amazon marketplace, identified one of their competitors
in their category,
who was a bad actor.
Correct.
Who was a bad actor and who was putting unsafe ingredients in their products and not labeling it and selling it on the Amazon marketplace.
Yeah,
Do I have that correct?
Yes, there were a litany of violations. I think they had things like FDA approved on the label, and it wasn't FDA approved. But I've seen this before. This is not new. You and I have spoken at the Prosper Show in the past. There was a seller at the Prosper Show on a panel I was doing a couple of years ago who was attacked like this. All of their sales were siphoned off by these fraudsters who were selling inferior product that didn't contain what they said it contained.
Right. And in fact, contained unsafe products for.
In this recent case, known carcinogens were present when they got these products tested in their own labs, which begs the question, when they reported it to Amazon, which, by the way, they were doing for a while before we got involved to help them. When they bought these products, had them tested and reported it to Amazon, first of all, Amazon probably gave them a copy and paste generic garbage message, right? Which didn't indicate any action was taken, but the listings were still up. I mean, you can prove that no action was taken by seeing people buy the products.
Yeah.
All Amazon had to do was pull some of those units out of FBA, ship them off to a lab, test them, and find those known carcinogens themselves. They were either too incompetent or too lazy or too disinterested to do that. So the top selling ASIN, I mean, just to give you a sense of the scope, and I won't go through all the ASINs, multiple ASINs. Let's just talk about the top seller, I believe was selling 8,000 units a month for months or years. So do the math. And that's just one of the ASINs of these products. There might have been a dozen total. So 8,000 units of that one ASIN were being sold. The labels didn't match the products. Not only did they not match accurately, they conveniently left out the part about carcinogens and,
So I just did the math, Chris. That's hundreds of thousands of
units.
cancer-causing products being sold to Amazon shoppers on the Amazon platform.
Right.
Did I get that right?
And again, and this is, yes. And again, you've heard the whole, Amazon always says we're just the marketplace. We're just the platform.
Yeah.
But I'm not a legal or compliance expert in terms of retail stores, brick and mortar, but isn't the store liable if they're selling products like this? If you walked into a Target or a Best Buy or a Walmart and you bought something like this and you consumed it and it harmed you, wouldn't those stores be liable? And that's why they take precautions, and that's why they invest resources in preventing this from happening to their shoppers.
And oh, by the way, I don't want to give my customers cancer.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So this is just one example. Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
But these are the types of, this was also reported, I believe, to the FTC in this particular case. We're getting to the point where there's so many of these. I'm wondering in my head if I'm talking about the same one. This, I believe, was also reported to the FTC.
They all kind of smushed together because you see so many examples of
these types of these are legitimate, well-intentioned. Yeah. It's not just, we've talked to them. Sometimes they hire us. It's not just about outdoing their competitor or making money for them. They're selling consumables, and they're horrified that a competitor, all they have to do is make fake IP complaints about them or fake their labels. I think what's emboldening some of these fraudsters is they know that Amazon receives these reports of abuse and either doesn't respond or doesn't review it. When I worked at Amazon and we had this sort of thing come in, it was a fire drill. I mean, it was done manually more than algorithmically or with, maybe a combination of manual and automation.
Everything stopped. The ending cord was pulled and everyone attacked it.
The same thing as when Jeff got this Bezos escalation. Jeff adds the question mark, sends the email to my boss or my boss's boss, and it filters down to one of us, and we would work on it. Fire drill. Everything stops. We need bodies. We need to put all these sellers and listings into a bucket, and we need to go through them one at a time. So I think what's happening is a lot of executive churn at the top of the company, a lot of enforcement teams maybe with turnover, and some of the processes that were present when I was there have sort of been, maybe forgotten or put to the side when there's a new head who comes in who takes over the teams.
Yeah.
And there's no more fire drill, I guess, because when we help people report this, or a lot of sellers report it themselves, they don't hire us to do it. When they report this stuff, they get silenced or they get ignored, or they get a copy and paste, or they get a, hey, we'll look into it. This recent case with the AG's office, they actually responded to the AG's office with the, hey, we'll look into it, we'll get back to you. Even though they were given a 7 or a 10-day deadline by that state's attorney general. More than 10 days went by, and they hadn't done anything. The listings were up for all 10 of those days and beyond.
Chris, I'm going to have to meditate after we finish this episode. Man, my blood's just up.
Silver lining. I'm happy to report that's been resolved. Those listings are down. It is possible to accomplish this. We hear from brands who say, I'm slamming my head against the wall. Nobody listens. It's impossible. Don't give up. There is hope. You can report this, but report this multiple ways, multiple irons in the fire, and please report it on a management or higher level at the company where enforcement teams can't get away with, I'm going to transfer it to my buddy on this other team, and then he's going to transfer it back. Or we're going to transfer it to some other compliance team. And of course, because we're so siloed, they can't tell us what they're going to do, and we can't ask them again what they're going to do. That's the way it works now. That's why it's so inefficient inside the company. So,
Chris, honestly, thank you for what you do. I mean, you not only are you helping small businesses and sellers who are doing things the right way, and you're not You guys are not sending cash in a suitcase to someone at Amazon to bribe them to get this stuff done. You're doing it all the hard way,
Yeah.
but the right way. And you've done good. You do so much good at e-commerce, Chris, with your amazing team. I mean, you literally worked with an attorney general office to get cancer-inducing, cancer-causing products off the Amazon marketplace. That's just amazing work.
Yeah, can't take the credit myself. Leah works on this compliance material, brand registry abuse more often than I do sometimes. So Leah and as you mentioned, Michael, I mean, my team is a mixture of ex-Amazon in terms of appeals and compliance work, and people who have managed Amazon businesses or startups like Leah. They've seen it does make them want to meditate because they've seen things that they didn't expect to see.
Yeah.
Because the marketplace has scaled so poorly in terms of enforcement, at least. I know they're making money. Right? It's scaled well in terms of the machine. But the machine's missing a lot of parts here in order to run a safe, effective buying experience. And Amazon's, not to go all Star Trek on you, but the prime directive here is supposed to be the most optimal buyer experience, also the safest buyer experience, right?
Yeah. How can you claim to be customer obsessed if you're allowing products to be sold on your product on your marketplace that cause cancer?
Yeah.
How can that be good for your shopper? If you're allowing products that are unsafe, how can that be good?
And you do a lot of
in general.
Yeah, I mean, kudos to you as well. You do a lot of national media interviews. We've been somewhat surprised that we'll hear from some reporters who cover Amazon who will say, well, this sounds like a seller issue, not a buyer issue. And they kind of, kick it off to the side.
The issue we just talked about?
Well,
that's a seller issue?
The issue of like,
not a public concern?
I think some of them are thinking, and I don't want to speak for some reporters who might be nixed by a higher level managing editor, but they want to do the story. So I should make that qualification or distinction. But I think sometimes they see seller on seller crime, competitors attacking competitors, and they think, oh, these are just business rivals trying to rub each other out, like a couple of, mafia dons using their generals to kick each other out of different markets and, racketeering beefs and all sorts of stuff like that. And they just see it as sellers settling scores with each other, and they're forgetting that buyers are consistently caught in that crossfire.
Right.
And those buyers don't know this stuff as well as sellers or service providers or brand owners, people who are in the Amazon community consuming media coverage of Amazon, who are in the trenches working on this stuff to get their sales back on track. These are just buyers. So, I mean, to a certain extent, if they're tuning this all out after it's been put in front of them, yeah, you can blame the buyer a little bit for putting on their earphones and tuning it out. But what if it's never presented the right way, or if it's never put in front of them properly in the first place? And you wonder about this stuff when you see examples like this most recent one, or at the beginning of this podcast, this wonderful Day 2 podcast that you're doing. The seller who got themselves reinstated and got all their fake reviews back, what's the safety risk to the consumer that seller is now out peddling their wares? What if that seller sells consumables? What if that seller sells electronics that could potentially, create sparks at the outlet? I mean, is that a good thing to have back on the site? So
look, Chris, you're doing well in your agency, and you're doing good, not just for sellers and small businesses, but literally for the buying public. And we know that half of online sales are going to Amazon. This is a big deal. We're talking about hundreds of millions of people buying products on an Amazon platform. And thanks again for what you do. And the final analysis, many times the tools created by Amazon for self-policing are used against well-meaning sellers.
That's right.
Sellers who, without, Amazon wouldn't be what it is today without them. It's not just the behavior of Amazon sometimes that makes it a jungle in the wild. Sometimes it's the wild animals that inhabit that jungle. And there are plenty of fraudsters that are out there. Look, if any of these attacks happen to you, follow Chris's sage advice. He is literally on the front lines fighting this battle. Chris, how can folks get a hold of you if they get attacked, or if they have one of these issues that are causing public concern?
Right. And by the way, you don't have to hire us necessarily. Some of these abuse reporting projects because Amazon is so inept at dealing with these. Some of these are large projects that we have to charge some of our higher fees for.
Sure.
You don't need to hire us. You can contact us at ecommercechris.com. I've got a contact form on my site. People like Jason Boyce know where to reach me personally. But
Right.
like you said,
Got you on speed dial.
right. Like you said, we're seeing this stuff all the time. It's not so much that, we're the Einsteins on the planet that know how to do everything all the time. We're seeing these cases every day. We've fixed them in the past. So we at least know how to get you on the path to, there's something dangerous happening here, something terrible happening, not just to your brand, but to buyers, how to report it. And if Amazon's not listening, then you will probably have to start exploring the FTC or your state attorney general or your congressional representative, because there could be lives at stake. You can't afford to just say it's somebody else's problem. As a seller, as a brand owner on Amazon, you're somewhat morally obligated to report it, even if it's not your top selling ASIN, at least in my opinion.
Absolutely.
So we're happy to guide. Yeah.
Chris, send my warm regards to Leah and Michael, who are doing God's work over there at E-commerce Chris. And thank you so much for all that you do. And thanks for being on this show. We're going to have you back, to share more of these juicy stories and how sellers can help defend themselves against fraudsters and criminals out there. If you're ready to start growing and protecting your brand on Amazon with a team of experienced Amazon operators, you can visit us at day2podcast.com. That's day2podcast.com. And lastly, if you know anyone else who would gain value from this podcast, please share it with them. Thanks for listening and happy selling.